So I mentioned that this is going to be a little bit different. We've been doing, I think this is our seventh conversation with entrepreneurs. And you reached out and you volunteered to be a speaker. And I think it was interesting. It'll be the first speaker that we've done that is still really early in their journey. And normally I don't think I would have thought of having you or your type of entrepreneur on the conversation. But I realized in discussion that that's a really important stage that every entrepreneur's gone through, is at the very beginning when you're navigating the first steps for the first time. And I thought it would be a really interesting variety over an entire series of conversations. And it's definitely very real. And so this will be a little bit different. We'll focus on some different things. And I also think that this is, I'm going to tie in a little bit more stories from my own time in your seat. I think that'll be an interesting back and forth. And I hope that you get as much value as the rest of our listeners do. Yeah, so to get started, I'm not going to go through a bio of who you are. Everybody can find you on LinkedIn, and they can. And I know because I've seen your LinkedIn profile; it's all there.
Updated.
Updated. What I'd like you to start off with is tell us a little bit about what your business is today, and what it is at its. A little bit about the idea itself, sure. What it is, and where do you think it is on the journey of becoming a business?
So we're still in the startup stage. My name is InVerte, and basically we reduce waste and cost at restaurants through accurate portion control devices and machine learning. In terms of the stage that we're in right now, we're still developing the prototype, trying to perfect the solution, and also developing the machine learning algorithms. But will say that I'm in the market discovery stage.
So when did you come up with this business idea, and how did that come about?
So I joined the Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship at the Memorial University a couple of 2 years ago. And then I got introduced into this idea by a restaurant owner. So I felt passionate about solving this issue of food waste. And also I felt very challenged because of the complexity that it involves to develop a software and hardware solution.
So because I know a little bit about this idea, what is your target market?
My target market are restaurants that primarily work with a prep table.
Maybe go a little bit deeper. Give us an idea what the idea is.
So the idea is to develop an Internet of Things weighing scale for food pans. So whenever you go to Subway, for example, you're going to see in front of you that there's a prep table in which food pans are placed. And inside those food pans, there are going to be ingredients. So our idea is to track the weight of those food pans in order to guarantee accurate portions and also reuse the data generated by those weighing scales in order to provide a food waste analytics service.
Yeah, to help them order the right amounts and not waste any food. Yeah, absolutely. So you obviously consider yourself an entrepreneur, and you wouldn't have volunteered for this talk, and you self-identify. I was wondering when you first started thinking of yourself that way.
When I started thinking about myself, I was an entrepreneur. I will say officially when I incorporated this business. But the story goes long ago when I was selling my alpaca sweaters. Long ago. When I was selling alpaca sweaters in St. John's. Basically, I brought alpaca sweaters from the highlands of Ecuador, and I sold them to customers.
Now, in our pre-conversation, just exploring some of your story, you told me that you actually had a lot of inspiration from family. I want to talk about where you first started thinking about entrepreneurship.
So when I started thinking about entrepreneurship was when I was probably 9 years old, and basically I used to sell pottery. I used to sell all sorts of stuff to my family and friends, and basically I got my inspiration of my grandfathers because they are entrepreneurs, they have businesses, and obviously that influenced how I see the world and who I want to be in this world.
So one of the areas that I'd like to explore, because I think it's a real story, and I talk to a lot of people in similar situations, is that you're an entrepreneur, you're self-identifying, you're starting a business, you've incorporated, you're prototyping. I assume you're talking to potential customers and stakeholders. But you are a student, you are young, and you are also a newcomer to Canada. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to go through each one of those and what do you see as both disadvantages or challenges you've had to overcome, but also advantages that's created for you, or things that you think set you apart. So let's start with just simply your status as a student. How has that helped or hindered you?
Oh, that has been really helpful. I see it as an advantage because people are more open to talk to students. I remember once I talked to a friend and he said, like, leverage the fact that you're still a student in order for you to get more and better customer interviews, right? So I see it as an advantage.
And just simply being a younger person, do you think that has been a help or a hinder?
Both, I will call it, because it can be as an advantage because, as you said, I'm young and I'm still in the process of learning all of this stuff. But that gives me an edge of being more creative, I will call it, being more open to different ideas. And yes, but however, the disadvantage of this is that I don't have a lot of credibility as a student. For example, regarding the machine learning service that we're trying to offer, obviously, as a computer science student, it's not like people are dying to try my service. That's why I hired, or I basically invited a friend who is a math PhD to join us for our team.
Absolutely. And what about as a newcomer? We connected first as trying to build your network and your LinkedIn and your profile as an entrepreneur, but how has it been? Has it been a help? Has it been giving you some unique status, or has it been a challenge?
As a newcomer, I think it has been possibly both. Again, that will be the most accurate answer, because there are times when people are more open to talk to you because you're a newcomer and they want to help you. But there are other cases in which they are close-minded and they have their mentality, and they would rather not get to talk to you.
So when you look at your business idea as it is, what are the next steps? Like, if you had to describe in a perfect world, magic wand, what are the next steps of your business evolution? What's it look like?
So if we say in a time frame of a year, I will say that I want to complete my MyTax internship in order for me to finish developing the prototype and actually test it. Because as I talked to a mentor, they were telling me that it's imperative for me to actually put a specific amount of how much restaurants can be looking to save in order to attract potential early adopters.
So I have at least two chefs in the audience, so I would be remiss if I didn't address what are you saying if customers say that restaurants are in a really tough time right now, and you're trying to sell them more things? What's your feedback, or what's your response on? Has anybody been challenging you on that business model?
No, obviously, right now the time is not the perfect time to actually be introducing a new solution to the restaurant industry, and that's why I see this as an advantage, because it gives us time to actually perfect the solution. And once the economy and this pandemic has passed, some other doors are going to be open, and that's when I can introduce the solution.
Are you looking into, so some of the areas that it took me a long time to learn were things like intellectual property. Have you been looking at that?
That's a big one, yes. I have contacted the Memorial University Intellectual Property Officer, and she has been advising me, but obviously it's very hard to go through the customer discovery process without actually showing the idea. And obviously I'm kind of confident that how the idea looks right now is going to change in the near future. So that's why in that aspect, I'm open to showing the idea, how the prototype looks, and so on.
So when you say you're prototyping, are you actually building the items?
Correct. I 3D printed this structure in which the food pan will go in, and I actually embedded the load cell because this is a component that allows you to track the weight.
Nice. How do you picture the business model? Because that's another thing, is I understood simple business models of selling retail and wholesale, but yours sounds like there's a lot of different opportunities for revenue and the way to communicate the money flow. How are you figuring that out?
So the main revenue streams are going to be direct to business or direct to consumer in this case, which are the restaurants. And they're going to be buying a one-time investment. They're going to be investing on the weighing scale. That's a one-time investment. And obviously, they are going to be, if they want to use the machine learning algorithms in order to help them predict and so on, they are going to pay a subscription fee of, we're still debating on what's the right amount.
So one of the things I remember, because I'm picturing myself, I'm getting a lot of nostalgia the first time I was in business plan competitions and I had business plans and I had, done little trials. I had talked to potential customers. I had a website up. I had a logo started. And I look back and don't take this the wrong way. I look back now and I was like, oh man, there was so much I didn't know. But at the same time, totally. I think that if the danger of knowing too many things will prevent you from moving forward. And that's one of the things that was interesting in this conversation is if you knew too much about the ways or the risks or the things that could go wrong, that might prevent you from moving forward. I think there's a certain amount of power in the initial naivete, as it were.
That's true, yes.
But in your short time of running this business and ideation and validating, and you've been working on this, you've incorporated, you have partners, you've done a lot of work on it. What has been the most exciting point for you so far?
Actually, the product development. Because I feel very challenged by all the complexity that involves developing the solution to be market ready. Because there are some things that you have to consider, such as the security aspect. For example, protecting your IoT network or making the power system in which the weighing scale will get the power from, make it secure so that it won't explode, right? So I feel these things are very interesting. Yes, that's pretty much it.
So I'm going to guess that even in the short time you've been working on this project, that you've already made some mistakes.
Oh yeah, totally.
Can you give us some examples of some cringeworthy mistakes?
So the first mistake that I made was revealing, once I got accepted into this opportunity to come up with this solution by the Memorial Center for Entrepreneurship, I told this idea to one of my computer science friends. And obviously, at the moment, I didn't see how complex it is going to be to build the solution. So that's why I told him, yeah, man, join me and we can build the solution. However, as I started to brainstorm and actually prototype, I saw that I'm going to need the help of an engineer. So that's why I told my friend, man, like I am the computer scientist, so that's why I'm handling this aspect. And I basically told him that he's not he can be in the team and he cannot be an equity holder of the business. And that was kind of a bad moment. I felt very bad because I had to kick my friend out of the curve, and didn't feel right. But those are some mistakes that you make.
Founder problems, pre-commercialization. It's actually more common than you might think, for sure. Speaking about people, so one of the things, like we've talked about your business idea a little bit, and you're thinking about the problem, you're talking to your customer, you're talking about the business model, you're talking about the technology. As you grow this business, there's a lot of business considerations I haven't heard mention of so far. Like, what do you think about hiring your first people? What do you think about running a team and managing a team? Have you put much thought into the actual organizational side of the company?
So in terms of organization, I will be the CEO, and I have other friends who are helping me with with other aspects of the business. For example, I have my friend who is the chief financial officer, and other friends who is the technology officer. And in terms of hiring people, definitely our first hires are going to be around people who have the knowledge to take this prototype into a market-ready product.
I definitely want to. I want to follow up in like 2 years. Because the people side for me is where all the best laid plans start to go to the sideways of the team, and motivating, incentivize. One of the biggest steps for me, and my personal belief in building a team and a culture and organization to accomplish your business goals, is about understanding your values and your why and the purpose of the business. I was wondering if I asked you, what was your why? What's your purpose? Why are you taking the initiative and the time to be an entrepreneur? Do you have an answer for that? Any thoughts?
Yes, I feel very passionate to turn InVerte into a actual business because of the potential of reducing food waste. Basically, I don't know if you're aware, but food waste is a huge problem all over the world. So just to give you some statistics, in Canada, for example, $50 billion are wasted every year because of the food that is not consumed. That equals, I don't remember the exact amount in terms of kilograms, but it's huge. I mean, I was reading the other day that one in every seven Canadians is have food insecurity issues, and that's why like it doesn't make sense for me that so much food is being wasted while these other well there are people who don't have the food security to carry healthy lifestyles.
We have a question from the audience that is a good question. Like I'm picturing this as like a pitch competition. You're getting judge questions, challenging
Yes,
you on your
okay,
business model, and you seem really up to challenge,
nice.
which is really great. So understanding that industrial equipment is more durable, but everything will break down eventually.
Sure.
How do you picture this being serviced, replaced, or repaired for companies who buy it? Is it more fragile because of the technology in the equipment?
Oh, yes. In terms of that, for the prototype, since we're using a 3D a 3D printer, that's going to be an issue, right? However, down the road, we're going to be using a different methodology called injection molding, in which we'll make sure that the electronic components are surrounded or yes, protected so that no water or cold goes into these components, in which will alter or modify the calculations. But how will I modify? The way we have designed the prototype, it's actually not that complicated to lift the food pan bed in order for us to remove it and change the electronics or the batteries that might go wrong or that might damage, right?
If you look forward to the next year or so, what would be your biggest fears around growing the business?
I think you touch on the topic of managing people. I think that's one of the most scariest thing, because since I'm the CEO, I will need to lead a team of people, and obviously most decisions are going to be based on how I see the company evolving, and there are things that obviously I might make some mistakes, and that's something that scares me. But obviously, it's a learning experience, and I'm excited for it.
You've talked a little bit about your support network to date. Aside from the center and your partners, what other supports or mentors have you managed to build around you?
So one of the biggest helps that I'm getting from is from the Atlantic Canada Study and Stay program. They're helping me through referrals, for example, to connections to some restaurants, in order for me to keep on validating the idea. Other For example, they also are offering them. They gave me access to a mentor who's had experience on this entrepreneurial area, and he's guiding me, and I'm very content about it.
One of the big areas, especially because you're a little bit more on the technology front, and the common understanding of business is very much focused on the financing route. Where are your thoughts on that? Because so I have a pretty good familiarity of different ways that companies have as a traditional journey. Have you given much thought? Because you're going to need a lot of capital, I assume.
That's true, yes. So in terms of capital, we have, or my tax proposal has been approved, and we have enough money to take this prototype into the
So do
MVP.
you want to actually stop and explain what the MyTax is for people who have no idea?
Oh, of course, MyTex is an organization that finances research projects into turning these projects into an actual customer-ready product. And so our research proposal, it's being supervised by one of the professors at MUN, and he's helping with all the technicalities and complexities that might arise.
And what other, like, how long is that process, and how hands-on is it? Like, what kind of resources do you get? I'm thinking of it almost as a business incubator or accelerator program. Is it similar?
Mm, in a way, we have to, well, yes and no, because we are working with a business with an accelerator program, an incubator, but this is totally different because they are just offering the financing. They are helping us, they are supporting us through internships in order for us to keep on working on this project. Because as you mentioned, specifically a hardware product requires a lot of capital. And down the road, we're going to keep on raising money, but obviously provided that the product delivers what it promises, right?
Do you have any thoughts on the future financing route that you're going to take? Have you looked at that kind of roadmap of what you expect to go through?
So definitely, I want to get into a incubator who can help us with the initial seed capital funding, and perhaps after that we can look into venture capital investment. But for the moment being, we're not going to need much money in order to fully build this prototype and to upgrade this prototype.
If restaurants don't work, what's your plan B?
The plan B, I will still consider something around food waste because this is a problem that an existing problem. Obviously, I will target something more for a household level. For example, like an app that helps you track your groceries, etc. Because, for example, I saw the other day that the Canadian government is offering financial incentives to entrepreneurs or ideas who have the potential to reduce food waste.
I'm just trying, because your idea is making me think that like restaurants might be a challenging first market, but the same equipment it needs in like cafeterias or small scale food manufacturers, people who do repetitive food motions and portion control is really important. Like the number of companies I know who just make submarine sandwiches for convenience stores, but they wouldn't be considered a restaurant. But they would have the same fridge with the containers. There might be other opportunities that you won't have to pivot that far. The challenge is, and as you go through, I'm interested in continuing to hear about your idea as it develops. I think I told you in a past conversation, when my first business started out as an idea to connect chefs and farmers. And there was all kinds of disconnects, and the idea of connecting chefs and farmers so they could work directly with each other just had all kinds of merit. And then when I started actually doing the work, it took me 1 month to find out that there was reasons why they're not working together. And we pivoted quickly to the exact same service, but to farms and consumers, farm and grocery buyers, as opposed to restaurants. Right. So it'll be interesting as you go through to find out if your end user is not the restaurant owner, it's somebody else in a complementary sector. I'm always interested because I actually just recently listened to a podcast, the founder of Netflix with Tim Ferriss, and he was talking about how he believes all ideas are garbage. Like all ideas are bad. Right. He's like, he's never seen an idea that was good enough to create a business. It's about implementing and iterating and changing your idea and making it work. So it's an interesting, and I think that you're going to be very much a true example of that. And you're not letting the unknowns and the expectations that you're going to have challenges stop you from moving forward, which is really great. So you're in school, you're doing lots of education, you're talking to advisors, and you have the MyTax internship. Are there any other like books or podcasts or experts that that shift your perspective or solidify your perspective on entrepreneurship or your business model?
So lately I've been reading this book called The Mom Test.
No.
I don't know if you ever heard of it. No, it's actually really cool because it teaches you how to talk to potential customers. In the past I've made the mistake of actually pitching my idea to potential customers, and that's a issue because it assumes that you know the problem. It assumes that you have fully understanding of the problem, and which is not the case for me specifically. And that's why you want to keep your questions open, and also what else? Something that I can recall from that book. Basically, it's around not pitching your idea and being open to actually invalidating the initial idea, right?
Yeah, that's a really important thing. Like you're going in not convinced you have the solution, just knowing that you're making the effort and you're open to new ideas. Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard of that book, but I'm going to add it to my list. I do like a good perspective shift. So I've actually gone through most of the questions I had for you. I was wondering if there's anything about, so you have been on this journey for a little while now. So as we close out the interview for today, what do you wish, if anything, that you had known when you got started? Is there anything you've learned already that you wish you had learned earlier? or you wish that either students, youth, newcomers, new entrepreneurs, that you wish you had access to as information or experience?
I would say I wish I had knew more about electrical engineering because that part took me a while to figure out. Especially, I made many poor soldering jobs in which I messed up many of my microchips, and that was some tough moments. I felt very demotivated because I didn't knew all those specifics of how to properly solder. But now, after 6 months of working on this idea, it's been a journey.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who would not have undertook to figure out electronic engineering. They would have just hired someone. But it's interesting to get that extra understanding, so you'll know your product that much better and what it can and cannot do, and it'll help you work with contractors in the future. So I know this is a little bit shorter than some of our conversations, but I think that this is definitely almost like chapter one, where it'll be interesting to see, like after my tax, be interesting to check in a couple of years when you're at an investment stage or at employee stage, because I can't wait to hear your first time hiring, your first time firing. You know, I really enjoy people's first time through these experiences because you can't learn how to deal with them in school. It's just impossible for you to learn in school.
That's true.
I have a business degree. I've worked in lots of businesses before I opened my own, and there's just some things you have to learn. You can share and you can talk to like-minded people with similar challenges, but it's always interesting to see how people figure it out, because that's what it is. It's figuring it out.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Makes sense.
And I will come back down to the floor, and I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions from the audience.